Single mom's lowest moment. What happened next shocked everyone. Sarah Collins stood in the rain outside her apartment building, clutching her 5-year-old daughter's hand in one hand and an eviction notice in the other. The car she'd been living in for the past week had just been repossessed, her phone service disconnected, and the last $20 she had in the world had been spent on her daughter's asthma medication. As she looked down at Emma's trusting face, Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. She walked into the local fire station, prepared to do the unthinkable and surrender her child under the safe haven law. What happened in the next 30 seconds would not only change the trajectory of both their lives, but would spark a chain reaction that would eventually expose a multi-million-dollar fraud, reunite a family torn apart by lies, and remind an entire community about the power of second chances. If you're already feeling the emotional weight of Sarah's impossible choice, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that reveal how our darkest moments can sometimes lead to our most unexpected blessings, and how compassion can transform lives when it arrives at exactly the right moment. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, a relentless April downpour that seemed to mirror Sarah's spiraling circumstances. At 32, she had never imagined her life would come to this. Homeless, jobless, and so desperate that she was considering the one thing she had sworn she would never do: give up her child. "Mommy, I'm cold," Emma whispered, her small hand tightening around Sarah's fingers. Her dark curls were plastered to her forehead, and despite the raincoat Sarah had made sure she wore, her daughter was shivering. "I know, baby. We'll get warm soon," Sarah promised, though she had no idea how she would keep that promise. The weight of the eviction notice in her pocket seemed to grow heavier with each step toward the fire station, its red brick building now visible through the curtain of rain. Sarah had always been the responsible one, the planner. After graduating with honors from nursing school, she had secured a good job at Memorial Hospital, bought a modest apartment, and started saving for Emma's education. Then, 6 months ago, everything had changed. The hospital had announced layoffs due to a merger, and Sarah, despite her excellent performance reviews, had found herself without a job. She'd immediately started looking for another position, confident that her skills and experience would quickly land her something new. But the weeks had turned into months, her savings had dwindled, and then Emma had developed pneumonia, requiring a hospital stay that had decimated what little financial cushion remained. The medical bills had piled up, rent had gone unpaid, and now, after exhausting every resource and favor she could think of, Sarah had reached her breaking point. The fire station loomed before them, its windows glowing warmly against the gray afternoon. Sarah knew that under the safe haven law, she could surrender Emma without legal consequences, ensuring her daughter would be placed with a family who could provide what Sarah currently couldn't: stability, shelter, food. The thought made her physically ill, but what choice did she have? Emma deserved better than sleeping in a car and going hungry. "Why are we going to the fire station, Mommy? Is there a fire?" Emma asked, her voice small but curious. Sarah swallowed hard. "No, sweetie. I need to talk to someone there." As they approached the entrance, Sarah's steps slowed. Could she really do this? Give up the child who had been the center of her world for 5 years? The child whose first smile, first steps, first words had been the greatest moments of Sarah's life? Her hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. Just as her fingers touched the cold metal, a deep voice called out from behind them. "Sarah? Sarah Collins, is that you?" She turned to see a tall man hurrying toward them, an umbrella held aloft against the rain. It took her a moment to recognize him, Dr. James Mitchell, the chief of emergency medicine at Memorial Hospital. She had worked under him for 3 years before the layoffs. "Dr. Mitchell," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. He reached them, immediately extending his umbrella to cover Sarah and Emma. "What are you doing here? Are you all right?" The simple question, asked with genuine concern, broke something inside Sarah. Tears she had been holding back for months suddenly spilled over, mixing with the raindrops on her cheeks. "No," she whispered. "I'm not all right at all." James Mitchell had seen many things in his 20 years as an emergency physician, but the sight of Sarah Collins, once one of his most capable nurses, standing drenched and broken outside a fire station with her young daughter sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the rain. "Come on," he said gently. "My car is just over there. Let's get you both out of this weather, and you can tell me what's going on." Sarah hesitated, looking back at the fire station door, then down at Emma, whose wide eyes were now fixed on Dr. Mitchell with curiosity. "I remember you," Emma said suddenly. "You gave me a lollipop when I had to get stitches." James smiled, crouching down to Emma's level despite the rain soaking through his pants. "That's right. You were very brave that day. 3 stitches and not a single tear." "I have a scar," Emma announced proudly, pushing back her wet hair to reveal a small white line near her hairline. "Battle scars are cool," James assured her, then straightened to look at Sarah. "Please, let me help. Whatever's happening, we can figure it out." The kindness in his eyes was Sarah's undoing. She nodded mutely and allowed him to guide them to his car, a practical sedan rather than the luxury vehicle she might have expected from someone in his position. Once they were settled inside, the heater blasting warm air that made Emma sigh with relief, James turned to Sarah. "Talk to me. What's going on?" The whole story came pouring out. The layoffs, the job search, Emma's illness, the mounting bills, the eviction, the car repossession. Sarah spoke in a flat, exhausted voice, too drained to even feel embarrassment at revealing the depths of her situation to her former boss. "I've tried everything," she concluded. "Every agency, every program. There's waiting lists for housing assistance. The shelters are full, and Her voice broke. "I can't let Emma keep sleeping in a car. She deserves better." James listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When Sarah finally fell silent, he was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he'd heard. "You were going to the fire station to surrender Emma under the safe haven law," he said finally. It wasn't a question. Sarah couldn't meet his eyes. "I don't see any other option. At least she'd be warm, fed, safe." "Sarah, look at me," James said, his voice gentle but firm. When she reluctantly raised her eyes to his, he continued, "That's not the only option. Not by a long shot." "What else can I do?" Sarah asked, desperation edging her voice. "I've tried everything." "Not everything," James said. "You haven't tried letting me help." Emma, who had been quietly playing with the zipper on her raincoat, looked up at this. "Are you going to help us, Dr. Mitchell? Mommy says it's not good to ask for help too much, but sometimes everybody needs it." James smiled at the child's simple wisdom. "Your mom is right that being independent is important. But she's also right that everyone needs help sometimes. Even doctors like me." He turned back to Sarah. "I have a proposition for you. My sister owns a small apartment building about 20 minutes from the hospital. She has a unit that's just been renovated, 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy, but clean and safe. It's available immediately." Sarah shook her head. "I appreciate the thought, but I can't afford rent right now. Not until I find a job." "That's the second part of my proposition," James continued. "Memorial just lost 2 nurses from the ER to a hospital in Seattle. We're short-staffed and need experienced people immediately. The position is yours if you want it." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "But the layoffs, the merger." "The merger was a disaster," James said bluntly. "The administrative team that pushed it through has been replaced. The new chief administrator is rebuilding, and quality patient care is the priority again. We need good nurses, Sarah. We need you." Hope, a sensation so foreign that Sarah barely recognized it, flickered to life in her chest. But caution quickly tamped it down. "I can't start immediately. I don't have childcare for Emma. My car's been repossessed. I don't even have a phone anymore." James held up a hand. "One step at a time. The apartment has furniture. My sister keeps it that way for emergency housing situations. You and Emma can move in today. The hospital has an emergency fund for staff in crisis. We can arrange in advance on your salary to get you back on your feet. As for childcare, the hospital daycare center has spots available." It seemed too good to be true. Sarah had learned the hard way that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "Why would you do all this for me?" James's expression softened. "Do you remember the night we had that massive pile-up on the interstate? 17 casualties coming in at once." Sarah nodded. It had been one of the most challenging shifts of her career. You stayed 4 hours past your shift, coordinating care, comforting family members, never losing your cool even when everything was chaos around you. James continued. "At one point, I found you in the supply closet, giving yourself exactly 30 seconds to cry before pulling yourself together and going back out there." Sarah remembered that moment. The overwhelming pressure, the brief breakdown, the deep breath before returning to duty. That night, you saved lives, James said simply. Not just by providing medical care, but by being the calm in the storm. I never forgot it. He paused. The truth is, Memorial needs nurses like you. This isn't charity, Sarah. It's an investment in an exceptional healthcare professional who's hit a rough patch. Emma, who had been listening intently, tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Mommy, can we go to the apartment? I'm tired of the car. The simple request from her daughter, so reasonable, so modest, was the final push Sarah needed. She looked at James, tears welling in her eyes again, but this time from something other than despair. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. James smiled. Let's get you both home. The apartment was indeed modest but clean and welcoming, a far cry from the bare-bones shelter Sarah had been envisioning as their best-case scenario. Emma ran from room to room, exclaiming over the twin bed with a colorful quilt, the small desk where she could draw, the bathtub where she could finally have a proper bath instead of the quick washes in public restrooms that had been their reality for the past week. James's sister, Diane, met them there with groceries, toiletries, and a prepaid phone for Sarah. In her 50s, with James's same kind eyes and direct manner, she waved away Sarah's tearful thanks. James told me you're one of the best nurses he's ever worked with, Diane said. My husband had a heart attack last year, and it was the nurses who got us through it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just paying it forward. That night, after Emma was bathed, fed, and tucked into a real bed for the first time in a week, Sarah sat on the small balcony of the apartment, wrapped in a blanket Diane had provided. The rain had finally stopped, and stars were beginning to appear in the clearing sky. 24 hours ago, she had been at her lowest point, ready to make an unthinkable choice out of sheer desperation. Now, she had shelter, the promise of a job, and most importantly, her daughter sleeping peacefully just inside. The whiplash of emotions was almost too much to process. Her new phone buzzed with a text from James, just checking in. Everything okay? Sarah typed back, better than okay. I don't know how to thank you. His response came quickly. Be at the hospital HR office at 9 a.m. tomorrow to fill out paperwork. That's thanks enough. Sarah smiled, feeling the weight of the past months beginning to lift from her shoulders. There was still a long road ahead, rebuilding her finances, regaining her professional confidence, helping Emma process the instability they'd experienced. But for the first time in a long time, that road didn't seem impossibly steep. What Sarah couldn't have known as she finally allowed herself to relax that night was that her journey was just beginning, and that the circumstances of her near surrender of Emma would eventually lead to discoveries that would shake Memorial Hospital to its foundations. Sarah's return to Memorial Hospital the next morning was surreal. Just 6 months ago, she had walked out of these same doors with a cardboard box of personal items, shell-shocked by the sudden layoff. Now, she was back, being welcomed by the HR director with unusual warmth and efficiency. Dr. Mitchell has fast-tracked everything, the director explained as Sarah signed form after form. We can have you back on payroll by the end of the week. In the meantime, here's an advance to help you get settled. The check she handed Sarah was for $3,000, enough to retrieve her car from the repossession company, pay for insurance, and still have money left for necessities. Sarah stared at it in disbelief. This is standard procedure for emergency staff assistance, the HR director assured her, though something in her tone suggested it wasn't entirely standard at all. After completing the paperwork, Sarah was given a tour of the hospital's daycare facility, where Emma would be enrolled starting the following Monday. The center was bright and well-equipped, with qualified teachers and a curriculum that made Sarah wish she could have afforded such a place for Emma before. Dr. Mitchell mentioned Emma has asthma, the daycare director said. We have a nurse on staff at all times, and we're fully equipped to handle her medication and any emergencies. By the time Sarah left the hospital that day, her head was spinning with the rapid changes in her circumstances. She retrieved her car, stopped by her old apartment to pick up the few possessions she'd been forced to leave behind, and spent the afternoon setting up their new home with Emma, who was thrilled to have her toys and books again. That evening, as they ate dinner at their small kitchen table, a simple meal of spaghetti, but one cooked in their own space rather than relying on charity or fast food, Emma looked up at Sarah with serious eyes. Mommy, are we going to be okay now? Sarah reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. Yes, baby. We're going to be okay. Is it because of Dr. Mitchell? He's like a superhero, but without a cape. Sarah smiled at the description. He helped us a lot. But you know what? We're also going to be okay because we're strong. Both of us. Emma nodded solemnly. Like when I had pneumonia and it was really hard to breathe, but I kept trying and then I got better. Exactly like that, Sarah agreed, marveling at her daughter's resilience. The following Monday, Sarah returned to work in the emergency department of Memorial Hospital. There were new faces among the staff, but many familiar ones as well, including several nurses who greeted her with genuine happiness. "Thank God you're back," said Margot, a veteran nurse who had been at Memorial for 20 years. "Things went downhill fast after the layoffs. We've been short-staffed for months." As Sarah settled back into the rhythm of emergency medicine, she began to notice changes in the hospital since her departure. Some were positive: new equipment, improved protocols. Others were concerning: staff stretched thin, supplies sometimes running low, a general sense of disorganization that hadn't been present before. James Mitchell, who had been out of town at a conference for the past few days, returned midweek and immediately sought Sarah out during her break. "How's it going?" he asked, joining her in the staff lounge. "Settling back in okay?" "Yes, thank you," Sarah said. "Everyone's been very welcoming." But what?" James prompted when she hesitated. "Something feels off," Sarah admitted. "The supply chain issues, the staffing shortages, it's worse than when I left, even though the merger is supposedly complete." James's expression turned serious. "You're right. Something is off. That's part of why I was so eager to bring you back." "I don't understand." James glanced around to ensure they were alone, then lowered his voice. "The merger was a cover for something else. I can't prove it yet, but I believe someone in administration has been siphoning funds, possibly for years." Sarah stared at him in shock. "Embezzlement? At Memorial?" "I think so." The new administrator, Dr. Patel, noticed discrepancies in the financial reports almost immediately after taking over. "But whoever is doing this is clever. The money disappears through a maze of vendor contracts and consulting fees." "What does this have to do with me?" Sarah asked, a knot forming in her stomach. "You have a unique perspective," James explained. "You worked here before the merger, left during the worst of it, and now you're back. You can see changes that those of us who've been here continuously might miss. Plus, you're meticulous, observant, and you